Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to PJ and the Beard. This is our 19 Conversations series. This is conversation number 39 with, like whenever we get guests, the guests are great. We got today Mr. Dave Weiner. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for doing it, man. This is great. So the whole idea here is to provide an hour of distraction. That's what we kind of came up with when the social distancing thing happened and we couldn't get together and kind of record and work on the little YouTube channel we have. And we're like, well, what can we do? Team Conversations series. This is conversation 39 with, like,
sorry,
the first time. No, that's cool. So we really appreciate you taking an hour to spend with us. I think it's great. There's already some people over here in the chat. I see Pete Hickson, who we know is down in Australia, and Kristen and Dave Barber from Barber Electronics.
Awesome.
Is in the chat. He was one of our guests earlier. He makes one of my favorite overdrive pedals of all time.
Very cool.
Brad Miller is in the house. Za from Brazil. So yeah, got some people already.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they didn't care. They just started talking to each other. They're waiting for the show to start.
Well, the delay is all my fault, everybody. I have no idea what's happening here with the camera. I mean, it looks like my Friedmans are flickering for some reason, but as long as you can kind of see me and you can hear me, then I think we're good, right?
Yeah, I think we got it.
No, it sounds great. I mean, you were telling us that you've been making a lot of changes there in your studio, and you just switched from doing like an online lesson and stuff. And so thanks for scrambling around to make this all come through for us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
A couple other guys joining. Brian and Chris and Paul Ewing is in the house. Awesome. So let's get to it. There's so many things that you've been involved in with, and we'd love to talk about that. But I want to start with your, and you'll have to help me out as I was having trouble figuring out just how new it is. But you have a new band.
Yes.
All right. Let's start with that. We have a clip, and if you're all right with it, we're going to show it.
Go for it. However, that band in that form does not exist anymore.
Well,
but go ahead and play it.
Let's go ahead and play it, and then you can tell us why. But I mean, we're pulling out for this clip. We're pulling out the section of that song that you guys posted with you soloing.
Sure.
And so, nope, I got the wrong page. Sorry. You know, technical difficulties all around today, apparently. There we go. Here we go. Let's check this out, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to Dave about it. I hate to stop it.
I appreciate that.
I've listened to that like 5 times since I found it. That's awesome, man.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So what's so now burst my bubble because you said it doesn't exist anymore. What's going on?
Well, so long story short, about a year ago, I kind of woke up and I was like, why do I not have a band with a vocalist just, playing fun music? Because I've got a bunch of different projects. But the one thing that I did when I started playing music, and the reason that I started playing music was to just have a great band, fun band, with vocals. And professionally, I've never done it for various reasons. You know, touring with Vai, couldn't think of anything better. Very time consuming, you know. That's the only reason that I could think of. You know, I've been very busy for literally over the 20 years that I've been a quote unquote professional. And but it just kind of realized it was like, I need to get something like that happening, because it's what I started doing. It's why I started playing guitar. So last year I started writing music. I put a band around me, and it was that band called Monument Shine. And there was a gig at the end of August. That was the target. It was like, all right, in a matter of about 3 months, write all the music, get a band together, rehearse, and go play the gig. And that was accomplished. Great. You know, great players. The music came out a little bit more on the side of blues rock than anticipated. But that was fine. You know, I'm also a big advocate of trust your instincts and let whatever comes out, you know, go from there if you want. So we did the gig. October is when the single and the video came out. And then over the winter, I reflected on that. And just through that refinement, first of all, the singer, Michelle, was doing that as a favor to me. That's not her music. You know, she was really saving my skin by doing it, because I'm sure, as anybody who's put together a band knows, trying to find a good singer is like winning the lottery. It's really, really difficult. And in the short amount of time that I had, there was nobody. So Michelle stepped up and did me a huge favor. And she and I are now doing kind of a side singer-songwriter type of thing. But over the winter, I just kind of refined everything. Found a new singer, a guy named Chad Ney, who, if I had to, you can go on Facebook. He's on there. He's been posting little acoustic covers of himself singing stuff. He's the new singer. Just got a new drummer who I have not met because of the whole quarantine thing. A friend posted a video with him. That drummer happened to know the singer. So we were like, hey, cool. Here's some of the music we've been writing. What do you think of it? And he started, you know, recording over top of it, loving it. So there's a new drummer in the band, again, who I have not met yet. His name is Josh Orlando. Absolutely ridiculous, amazing drummer. And right now we're kind of fleshing out the rest of the band. But it's an all-new band, all new music. Today we were writing song number 7. So we're trying to get 10 done, and then we're going to record. But and I don't even know if it'll still be the name Monument Shine. I don't want to make any decisions solely. I want everybody in the band to be making all the decisions together.
That's cool.
So yeah, that's, you know, that gig, that song, the video, all that stuff. I love it. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
The starting point. That's really what it was. It was a starting point, and things have been refined, and now we're going from there.
So just 2 quick things about that. One, even though that's not the lineup anymore, Dave has maybe a longer video, 35, 37 minutes, breaking that whole thing down as far as like how they set up and talking about the songwriting. Right. And Dave, being a true teacher, which we'll get into, is like, I will break down every part of this song for you, which was really cool. So my question being, you're in the Philly area, which, let me just get this out right away. My parents are from Western PA, but you and I can agree on the Sixers. So we'll just go with the Sixers and stay there.
There you go.
But so this talent pool that you're drawing from, are these all local from Philly then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And it, you know, not that it has to be like that.
Right.
But I kind of want it to be like that. You know, I want the band in the same area for the sake of convenience, really. So that when we can get together, and again, right now, there's nothing we can do about it. So we're writing over Skype. And I'll tell you, it's been working fantastically. We're writing more than we were before the quarantine because now nobody goes anywhere. So we just say, hey, you got an hour? Yeah, let's jump on Skype. Let's get 3 lines done, whatever it's going to be. So we're getting through this music, and you know, again, together we're deciding the direction of the band, and we're writing. It's a very all-in kind of situation for everybody, which is awesome. So yes, everybody is from the Philly area.
I wonder if there'll be some kind of renaissance coming after this quarantine of like new music, new art, new because everybody's.
I think so. I think a lot of people are just stockpiling their craft right now because there's nothing you can do. You know, you can't go gig right now. I do live streams at least once a week. I've been doing this kind of virtual jam session thing on Thursdays on my Facebook page, and that's a lot of fun to do. But it's, you know, what can you do? You can do that. You know, the home kind of streaming concert is fantastic. If you're in that place to just do that, we're in the place of writing right now. And I think a lot of other people are just, well, there's nothing else that I can do, so I'm just going to keep writing and writing and writing. Because we initially said, you know what, we're going to do 5 songs. We're going to record 1 out of them and release that as a single. And then we're going to do 5 as an EP later on. And now we're like, you know what, let's just keep writing. Let's just keep writing. Cool. So that's where we are.
Nice.
Sounds like a good music scene in Philly. We had a friend of mine, Eric Gerstenhauer, who lives out there. It's in that music scene out there, and he's always talked. He was on the show when we first started doing these, and had good things to say about it.
There's, you know, I was talking with the singer today. It's, you know, because I went from high school to college, and then I moved right to LA, and I skipped the whole kind of music scene as far as getting into it here in Philly, because I was in LA. I was there for a year, and then I started touring with Vai, and then I finally moved back here in 2013, and still lots of touring, you know, straight through 2017 really, and then it's kind of been a little one-off things since then. And again, you know, now who knows what's happening. But I came back, and in 2015, I was like, you know what? I don't really know anybody in the music scene here because I just never lived here as an adult, really. So I put together the Philly Guitar Club, which is just a free event monthly. We partnered with Sam Ash, and we just do a free open improv jam kind of thing. And really, I started it just to meet people in the community, and it's been fantastic. And through that, meeting other players, there's a big and really diverse but very skillful music scene here in Philly. It's really great.
That's cool, because we're only about 2 hours from you, so when things get rolling again, we'll come out to some random
absolutely
bar gig.
Come out for a jam at the once these jams start up again, and shows and all that great stuff.
So one comment in the chat, and I commented. I mean, I know Dave through social media, right? So I've seen the Instagram clips and the Facebook and all of that. And I noted that when we went live with him, that the background was a little different. The question is, hey, we know he's a PRS artist. Where are all the PRS? Because it is interesting. That's a different lineup than the wall hanger that's normally behind you. There's another question. Yeah, there's 2 questions.
Yeah, description says is a PRS artist. How come there's no PRS behind him there?
Well,
it's from our friend Jack the Rabbit.
So I am renovating this little home studio. So there used to be guitars all on this wall and all on this wall, and they're all spread out in other rooms right now. In the next couple of weeks, if not this week, I'll be hanging every guitar back up here, and there are quite a few PRSs. But there are, I mean, this thing right here, sitting next to this Les Paul, that's a PRS JA15, which is an absolutely beautiful jazz guitar. Not that you have to use it for jazz, because my buddy Emil Wursler, who's a amazing PRS artist, one of the best alternate pickers on the planet, is using JA15s for metal. You know, I've been recently dedicating time every day to studying more jazz guitar, so I've been using that one. But I also have this one sitting here, which is the guitar that was in that video, and this is a Silver Sky. You know, because ultimately I started on Strats. I'm a Strat guy. A lot of people don't look at me with Strats because of the touring that I've done with Vai, I can't use Strats for that music. I need humbuckers. I need 24 frets. So a lot of the other PRSs that I have were made for that kind of thing. But for me and my music, my Desert Island guitar is an, let's call it an S type,
Right.
all right? Because people get a little bent out of shape when you start calling this a Strat. And those are the people who have actually never played one of these, by the way.
Same thing. Brian Ewald said the same thing.
But it's just, anybody that's going to bash, it's just the definition of ignorance, isn't it? When these came out, before they were even available, people were being negative towards this thing. And it made no sense to me because people were like, oh my God, PRS just copied a Strat. But what about all of the other Strat copy companies that literally license the shapes from Fender to build the exact same thing, but maybe it's Relict or maybe it's whatever else. And those are great. There's a ton of great companies. PRS did something a little different, and they're awesome. They're absolutely fantastic. This is, if you don't know the story, I mean, between John Mayer and Paul Reed Smith, they took a 63 Strat and a 64 Strat, and they combined the best of, and that's what this is. And I've got a few high dollar Fender custom shop Strats. The build quality on this is beyond that. Just my experience. I know not everybody has the same experience, but just my experience, this thing is fantastic.
Well, you were talking about touring with Vai. One of your main guitars there was that 513 7-string, right? It's kind of a one of a kind.
Yeah.
That one's probably not lurking in that room at all, from what I can see.
I can get it real quick if you give me just a second.
Go ahead, Tom. As long as you're up for it.
While he's doing that, Brian said, please ask him down here. And I'm thinking the question that he's asking is that one here. So after he shows that guitar, we'll jump out on that question.
Yeah.
All right. So that's this one. And this one has been out on a bunch of Vai tours. And this is
bigger.
As far as I still understand, the one and only 7-string 513 that PRS has made. But it's just, I'm an ash body guy, so it's a maple top, obviously, but it's ash, maple, and an ebony board. These are DiMarzios. These are PAF 7s, and this is a Blaze, I believe. And if you don't know the 513, which they don't make anymore, now they make a variation of it called the 509, I think, or something like that. But
right.
there's two switches, and one is your standard 5-way, but this one is cuts the coils in half, and then low output humbucker mode, and then high output humbucker mode. And it's just an absolutely fantastic guitar. This thing has been in a lot of use and rotation since it was built. It looks like it was built in 2010. So yeah, this one's 10 years old. This has been out on tons of Vai tours and my own tours and stuff.
Yeah, in case somebody doesn't know, because we didn't mention it yet, other in passing, in case somebody doesn't know, the 20 years when he's talking about being out on the road and touring with Vai, he's talking about touring with Steve Vai.
That's right. Yeah, we thought we'd back into that one today, right?
Sure.
It was kind of like when we talked to Brian Ewald, right? Like we didn't go for the, hey, your PRS's demo got right out of the gate, because there's so much more that you all do.
Sure.
And but it was pretty wild. I don't know if it's going to be embarrassing or not. I feel like I stumbled across you, right? Like through social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, this guy's a great player. And then all the guitars behind you, and then the Guitopia thing, which we'll get into. Mm-hmm. And then somehow the whole Vai connection went. I'm like, good Lord, I've seen the guy play live 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, because it was always like, who is this guy on the stage that is trading licks with Steve Vai and just like looking super comfortable? And this is him right here.
And it's an interesting thing because it's a Steve Vai show. You're there to see Steve Vai.
Right.
It is what it is. And I get asked or commented, this comment comes up, even, Pliny, he's an Australian guitar player.
Yeah.
Great guitar player. We did a guitar camp together last summer. And then at NAMM, there was a Vai show for Ibanez. And of course, I'm there with all my PRSs. But Pliny was like, and I did, a decent amount of soloing there at that NAMM gig. And after the gig, Pliny goes, oh man, I've never seen you play so much lead. And it's like, you know, it's not easy being Steve Vai's guitar player.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he's Steve Vai. You're going to see all the guitar you could ever want from him. And, you know, his band is there. I'm hired to support him and play his parts and like him, which is not easy. And wouldn't be easy really for anybody. But it's an interesting situation when you know, there's this guitar player and you're trying to play guitar, you know, with him. It's an interesting situation. It's an awesome situation, no doubt.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could see. I don't know what's going on with Pat over there. That it would be like. Well, when we were talking about it, I'm like, well, let's use the clip from Monument Shine because, like, it's you. You know what I mean? That's you. And
I certainly do appreciate that. Again, you know, very early on, Steve told me, he's like, listen, you know, when you're talking with companies or whatever, he's like, use my name. You know, that's part of it. It's you have to. It's not about taking advantage. It's just, you know, when you've earned the right to get a door open by saying, oh, yeah, no, I play in Steve Vai's band. I've been in his band for 20 years and whatever else. That's great. You know, drop the name, do whatever. But yes, everybody's their own person. And hopefully they're doing something, you know, like I am with my band and various other things. So I see Brian's got a question here. He says, you played nearly 20 years with Jack Butler. Do you ever play Eugene? I think that's a reference to, I think you're talking about Eugene's Trick Bag, which is the kind of dueling guitar thing from Crossroads. And we did that a long time ago. But it's been quite a while, and Steve. It's not that Steve is hesitant to do that live. It just didn't really fit in what he was trying to do with that particular record and that particular show. But we did do that. I think back in like 2015 for a very brief time live. We did that.
Nice. There's well, okay. I'm trying to get these questions. Somebody said Jack asked if that was a 7-string. Yeah, that was a 7-string. And then
yeah, that's a 7-string. Yeah.
Guitar Hack, who has a YouTube channel, has a great YouTube channel. He asked how Steve Vai to work with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, Steve
would do it for 20 years if he wasn't, I bet.
Yeah, of course. You know, of course. You know, again, I went right from high school to college, and when I graduated from college, I moved out to LA to go to Musicians Institute. Just, I thought it'd be a great place to start, you know, doing something in music in LA. And then I was, you know, in school for a year. I was supposed to be there for 2 years, but I quit because I got the gig with Steve. And that's the only reason you go to school anyways, to get a job of some sort. So it doesn't make any sense to stay there. But I had maybe 2 guitars, a complete pile of junk crate amp, and that's it. And I said to Steve, because Steve was like, okay, show up on Monday at the studio and we're going to start rehearsals for the tour. And I was like, I don't have any gear. I don't really have anything. So from day one, he was like, oh, no, you know, you can borrow my gear, etc. So, I mean, he set me up with amps and racks and the effects and pedal board and everything. From day one, you know, that's the kind of guy he is. Super warm, generous, understanding, very enlightened, very evolved, just an exemplary human being. That's really the highest compliment I can pay him, and I think that's the highest compliment for anybody. He's just aside from the music side of things, as a person, he's awesome, because everybody knows, no matter what your industry, if you're working with people who are difficult or they're just jerks or whatever, you don't want to work with them. You know, you'll find someone else, and it's absolutely the same thing. Even when, you know, you're getting paid to be in the band and tour and etc., you're still not going to accept that role if you're not being treated well. And right. Steve has never done anything except for treat everyone just extremely well. He's that kind of guy. So working with Steve has been amazing. you know, as you said, I wouldn't have stayed for 20 years if it wasn't just an awesome situation that I look forward to every time we get to go out on tour.
And how did that? I know because I was doing some reading, but I have an idea anyway. But I think Pat wanted to ask too, like, how did that kind of come about? You said you went out to music school out there and stayed for a year, but there's kind of an interesting story there on how you hooked up with him. And I don't want you to go deep into the rabbit hole because it's out there on the internet. You've told the story probably 100 times, but
sure, I can tell you really briefly again that I did know moving to LA that if you're an amazing guitar player, and I don't know why I'm pointing at myself because I don't put myself in that category. If you're amazing at anything, it doesn't matter if nobody knows you. What's the point? You're not really gonna get anywhere. It's all about the people that you're working with and such. So I knew from day one of getting to LA, I had to start meeting people. So I was just looking at the job board at Musicians Institute the day that I arrived there, and I answered one little ad, and it happened to be Steve's manager, but there were no names. I didn't know who this person was. Luckily for me, it was Steve Vai's manager, and I worked for her, interning, right? 2 days a week, couple hours, just doing little intern stuff while I was at school. I wasn't there to work. I was there to go to school, at least, music school, and start to dive into the music scene and take things wherever I could take them. But it worked out that I was just working for her, and through her, I started interacting with Steve, and it was much more of a personal relationship with me and Steve before it was anything else, because I never pushed, oh, I'm a guitar player, you have to hear me. I never pushed any of that, because you're immediately put into a certain kind of classification when you start doing that kind of stuff. It has to be natural, it has to be organic, and again, it's the personal relationship that led to finally Steve saying, hey, I'd like to hear some of your music. So I did, and he liked it. And he liked me, again, personally, which he knew way more than my music. And that's when he was like, I could use another guitar player for this tour. Why don't you, do you want to be a part of it? I was like, of course,
Yes.
Well, I think the part of the story that grabs me from that moment until you had your first rehearsal was like a weekend, and you had to learn like 11 or 12. So you had to learn like a big part of the catalog before you showed up.
That was a Friday, and he said, all right, show up at his studio at the time was called the Mothership, which was in the Hollywood Hills. He's like, all right, show up on Monday at the Mothership, and that's it. We're starting rehearsals for the tour. It was a pretty last minute thing. So yeah, needless to say, I called my parents. I was like, yeah, I'm leaving school. They didn't really get it. They didn't really get what going on tour meant and all that kind of stuff. They didn't, but when they saw the first show, then they got it. They saw the big tour bus and the 3,000 people outside and et cetera, like, oh, okay, this is actually something of substance. So
where was the first show? Where did you play first? Do you remember?
I don't. It was probably like Phoenix or Albuquerque or something like that. Like, the first week of tours is usually some smaller markets just to kind of go from rehearsal mode to live performance mode. And even though we do that, that's what rehearsals are for. Anybody who plays live knows that it's not the same. It's not the same vibe when you're just in a rehearsal studio and then you get on stage with actual, people there as well. So it's usually somewhere in the Southwest, and then we start to work our way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, that would I could see how parents would be like, "You're doing what?" Being one, and then that was probably a pretty good feeling when they saw the first gig.
Well, yeah, because this is part of the story too. You kind of wanted to go right away, but you kind of graduated from high school early. Maybe you already said it, like you were 17, and they're like, "You need to go to college first." So you're like, "Okay, I'm going to college first," and then you make the jump to LA to go to MIT, and then GIT, MIT, and then you're only there for a year. They're like, what is this boy doing?
Well, you know, they didn't after college, they didn't care. You know,
Yeah.
It was just a matter of just get a degree in something and get that out of the way and then go do whatever you want. So going to MI was, you know, extra, let's say. It was just what I wanted to do. I did want to go right after high school, but I'm glad I didn't because I was nowhere near as mature. So doing it after college was, you know, was a good thing. But, you know, that's why they didn't really like, first of all, they didn't really get what touring meant, but they also weren't, you know, school was done for me as far as like actual school, like college and everything. Not music school is great. Go to it. You know, everybody, if you want to go. But it was an interesting situation. But, you know, here we are all these years later. But, yeah, good times.
So Pat, you wanted to get into some of the instructional stuff, right?
Yeah, and you can, again, it's internet research or whatever. And again, I backed my way into knowing who you are. So it seems that I think I've read things that you were sort of on YouTube and doing stuff early on, like with like Riff of the Week, and would do that. And then over time, and I'm terribly simplifying the story, over time, you kind of morphed that into Guitopia, which is sort of your official instructional program, right?
Right. I mean, I started doing it was called Riff of the Week at the time. Just, you know, like a weekly guitar lesson, which was a terrible idea to call it of the week, because if you don't do it every week, you're not going to be taken seriously. So I was like, all right, I'll do this every week. It's no problem. But this was when YouTube like started. So this was a long time ago at this point. And it was great. You know, I was doing it so consistently that someone from YouTube called me. This was way before there were plaques and trophies and you get the thing on the wall and influencers and all this, way before all that shit. And somebody from YouTube, they had a department that called people to do partnerships with them. And this is, again, not to be redundant, but way before it is what it is now. So I started, you know, I said, well, of course, yeah, sure. So, you know, I'm getting money from doing these weekly videos and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm getting into doing a lot of demos. And you know, it just kind of hit me. It was like, I don't want to be known as a demo guy. I don't want to be a talk show host. I don't want a YouTube show. I love it. And I love, you know, there's tons of my friends that do it. I was like, I'm a musician. That's all I want to be known as. And that's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it came the same thing with teaching. So I took it all away. I took it all off. But I also do kind of like passive income. As anybody else would, I do kind of like passive income. So I was just having a problem. I was having and it was probably stupid because I don't know, because now, you know, I still don't take numbers very seriously as far as views and subscribers. I know it has value. It's leverage, just like, you know, it's good leverage for a lot of different things, but I just didn't want to be seen as a guy doing, oh, he's a demo guy. I wanted to be known for my art. You know, I spend all day, every day doing this. To this day, I'm still, I mean, you see a book back here on a music stand. I'm a perpetual guitar student, as any good player will be. And it's never going to end. I put a lot of time into it. That's what I want to be known for. It's such a different world now because, you know, you ask some people, what do you want to do? They're like, I want to be a YouTube star. I'm like, you know, it kind of takes me back. Maybe I'm getting old in my 40s here and doing what I wanted to do before YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But it just seems like, you know, the vision was much higher than it used to be. Although it's a great thing, right? You stay at home, you make money, there you go. Great, be a YouTuber. Nothing wrong with that. Do your thing. That's all it comes down to. Do your thing.
Right.
But I'm like, it's never what I wanted to do. I wanted to make music and play it. That's it. And that's the only thing that really matters to me to this day. But again, you know, after you know, in between tours, most guitar players turn to teaching, you know, because now more than ever, you do it at home. It's very simple and etc. And I do private lessons on Skype, but very limited amount because I don't want to spend my time doing it. That's all it comes down to. So I took all the stuff that was on YouTube and I turned it into a website. And long story, not getting any shorter really, but now it's called Guitopia. Right. Guitopia.com. So all of those lessons that were on YouTube from the early 2000s up until now, it's all there, plus a million more other little things. Guitopia 2 has been in the design phase for quite a while, and it's about to go into the development phase, which is a whole new site, interface, inside out, ground up rebuild, and it's going to be great. But one of the reasons that I've been talking about it for a few years now and it still isn't done is because kind of what I'm saying here, it's not what I'm here for. You know, I'm here to write music and play it. But if I have to do something else to bring in passive income, it's Guitopia. Because think about, you know, who do you like to learn from? Is it somebody popular on YouTube? Maybe. That's great, you know? Mm-hmm. But to me, the only people I want to learn from, the only people I kind of trust, let's say, are the ones who have experience, because they've put in the time to go through the, you know, the mud, so to speak, to figure out what is what and what works. Conceptually, we could all go to med school. It doesn't mean we're doctors, you know? I always say it's like going to Home Depot and buying one of everything where you just spend a lot of time and money. Do you know how to build anything? Not at all. It's the experience that drives the knowledge. So giving the experience that I have to people and seeing kind of the lights turn on, and they're like, oh, okay, I get that now. Like, that's a really cool thing. So that's what Guitopia is all about. It's all about results, right? Any book. Most guitar education is, in my opinion, in my own world, a little wrong. Because most books are going to say, all right, here we go. We're going to learn a C chord, and an A chord, and a G chord, and a D chord, and an E chord, and your basic chords. And you might learn 5, 6, 7 of them, and you still have no idea what to do with them. Mm-hmm. That is the fatal error that then continues for decades in the learning path of a lot of guitar players and musicians in general. That's very wrong, right? Because time after time, I hear people saying, I've been playing for decades, I still don't know what I'm doing. And you know, it's because from the start, the habits of the learner have been slightly incorrect. My version is, I don't want to teach you 5 chords. I'm going to teach you 1, let's say a D chord. And now we're going to talk about rhythm, and we're going to talk about strumming. So that anybody on the planet, I can hand them a guitar, I can teach them this, I can teach them some strumming. And guess what? Immediately, they are now a guitarist. They're a musician. Because even if they're just going... quarter note, eighth, like kind of guitar strumming 101, but you're making a rhythm. You're making people's heads do this. And now you're a musician, right? It's not about knowing every chord and every scale and all the technique and all that stuff. Can you do something with it? All that stuff you just bought at Home Depot, can you do something with it? Or did you just buy it for the fun of it, you know? We kind of have a culture of learning of all input. I need to know more. I need to know. It feeds on the ego, right? I need to know more. I need to know that guy's doing it. I have to do it too. No, it's not. It's just not the way that I work, and it's not the way that Guitopia is built. It's built around, can you do something with one thing? And until you can, don't worry about learning anything else. Because how many $1 million songs were written with 3 chords? A lot of them, right? It's because those people took a couple of chords and they just figured out what to do with it and how to make your head bob. You know, they started going. That's 1 chord. And that's a strumming pattern. And guess what? Everybody's head is now doing this.
Maybe even a few of these.
Yeah, right. You know, so that's kind of my philosophy with anything, but certainly with guitar and the way that I learn. So I flipped that all around and I just put it all on Guitopia. Not that Guitopia is finished by any means. I mean, the actual guitar course, I'm just finishing the beginner path because it's so long. The goal was to make it extremely comprehensive, like way more comprehensive than I've ever been a part of or seen. So it's insane and it's taking so much time. But as far as I'm hearing from the people going through the path, they're coming out the other end. Like even experienced players, they're kind of like, you know what? I filled in a lot of gaps just by going through and reviewing stuff I might have already known. Just from a different, different perspective kind of thing. So sorry, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or pat myself on the back or anything. I'm just letting people know, that's my philosophy. That's the experience and results driven learning resources are the ones that I like. So that's what I, of course, wanted to produce.
Well, when you create something like that, you should toot your own horn a little bit. So I mean, I'm serious. I mean, like you've toured with Steve Vai for 20 years. You've earned the right to do that. Somebody asked in the chat, "Is Guitopia designed for all levels?" I think you just kind of answered that. But like, so who would it be good, or is there somebody it wouldn't be good for?
I mean, again, right now, so there's the lesson of the week, right? Again, we have to go back to learning fundamentals. And I'm talking like actually how to learn. So one of the biggest fundamental problems is that people don't know what to do with what they're learning. So that's why there's a lesson of the week. The lesson of the week is, all right, this week we're going to take a key and a quality and a technique and a rhythm and a genre, and I'm going to give you an example of what to do with it. That's extremely important. Learning by example to nurture the creative process, which will not grow if you are not creating. So learn, from any resource, learn the example, but in the lessons of the week, we get to a point of virtual trading. So I say, all right, let's practice this line. We're going to put the track on, because all of it's done over music. Because if you're not playing over music, I mean, what are you doing? Maybe you play by yourself, that's fine. But we practice the lick over music, and then we get into virtual trading. Because I try to tell people, all right, if our lick is, well, you know what? Let me turn on the amps here.
All right, we're all right with that.
There's nobody in this chat that will be upset. Not a single person. While he's doing that, just looking really quick, guys. I mean, you're starting entry place for a month is $3.96 up to $20 a month. I mean, to the end, this is a really reasonable program. I don't know that Dave was going to throw that out.
All right, so if we learn a lick, and let's say it's just a simple blues lick, like tomorrow, the new lessons of the week come out every Wednesday. So tomorrow's lesson is like this. It's called like a greasy bluesy kind of thing there. So it's a fun lesson, but again, I can teach you which is just, basic minor blues there, or, even minor pentatonic. But if you're not taking that and then doing something with it, you're just regurgitating, right? There's no real creative output happening. So in the improv part of the lessons, I try to encourage people to say, listen, let's just take some of it apart. So just think differently about it. Take a small slice of it. And if somebody's doing that, maybe you go. Then you start, you just change it. Just do something else. But the outputting, the results, that's where the emphasis has to be. Or else, I mean, we all know playing covers is a lot of fun. And it can be very educational. But we all know players who play covers and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't even know what the key and the quality of the song is. They just know, you know, they're supposed to be going right. They don't even know what the key is because they're simply regurgitating with no real kind of thought about it, and certainly no outputting in their own kind of creative way. So again, those are more of the things that are emphasized in my teaching philosophy and my learning philosophy is, you know, as like I said, I'll never stop learning.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. More than just learning a lick, you know, like it's not about learning the lick, it's about how to take that, and I like that a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah, you have to, you know, again, because we all learn these, you know, anything like that. But you know, I like to throw in some. You know, I'm still just thinking A minor pentatonic, but what happens if I put the 2 in there, the second note? So now I'm thinking of A minor pentatonic just with a B. Maybe a slide from the flat 5 to the 5. And now we've got this, you know, extra beautiful color there. But if you don't create, you don't know how to take something simple like that. And even that is a good example, because let's follow the path here. What do you do first? You learn a scale note for note, and a lot of people just learn by a pattern, which is a great place to get started. But you know, at least in my philosophy, patterns which we all will always use on some level, but are training wheels. And we want to get beyond the training wheels. And that just simply means let's understand what we're playing. You know, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, you know, so there's that. So the path, we start with just reciting, right? And then step 2 is, all right, well, let's start to make it our own. How? Or maybe we'll play a sequence, right? So there's the 3 notes from the scale, and then we'll start on the next note and go 3 more up. Right, so we're starting to rearrange the notes and making a little more musicality out of it. And that's where, you know, if I was in a room, let's say, of students, I would say, okay, now, you know, do your own version of that. So maybe somebody's going to go, where they're creating their own sequence of, maybe it's crossing strings, or maybe it's going to skip strings. Whatever it's going to be, but we have to have that creative thought, and you see how much very easily can come out of an A minor pentatonic scale, like kind of day 1 of learning the scales. So I think if people think a little bit like that they will be much more satisfied with their playing. Know what you're doing, and then focus on creativity. So you know, lesson of the week translates into write a lick, write a lot of licks, because that's working the outputting process.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So one thing we didn't really talk about, and is all of the things that you've learned, and being that, you know, you were in LA for a year, like, when did you actually start playing? Because I think, you know, you had said before, hey, at 17, maybe I wanted to pursue music right away, and parents like, take a beat, let's get the traditional degree. But when did you actually start? And a lot of the things that you're demoing now and explaining, how did you learn that?
I started playing when I was 10. I'm 43 now. I had a teacher. I used to go for a weekly lesson at the local guitar shop, and we touched on theory a little bit, but like most kind of small town guitar shop teachers, not a ton.
Right.
I remember learning. Talk Dirty to Me by Poison, and various other stuff that was out. I started playing in '86, so that's the stuff that was out in '86. But, and this is such a result of circumstance. In the room where I was taking lessons, even though on the radio like Poison and all that kind of stuff, in the room was a poster of Stevie Ray, Robert Cray, B.B. King, Scott Henderson, and Robin Ford.
Oh, wow.
And it made me, even though, I'm learning these songs and stuff, I was like, well, who are these people? And so started listening. And it really, I'm so thankful that those posters were hanging there, because it put me on a different path immediately. Immediately, like going back to this example, like if I'm going to play A minor pentatonic, I love throwing in other notes, some really nice colorful stuff. That came from those posters, because when I hear Robin Ford playing, Scott Henderson and Stevie Ray, BB and Robert Cray certainly use that kind of stuff, but they're much more traditionalists about the way they use it. Mm-hmm. Hearing Scott Henderson, and the way that he always, he loves to use the whammy bar, and he can get really nice and fusiony. Of course, Robin Ford as well. Throwing in diminished and all sorts of symmetrical scales. That for me started because of posters on the wall. So immediately 10 and a half, I started wanting to know more about that kind of playing. My teacher couldn't really tell me, he didn't really know. So I started getting books. There was no internet at the time. So I was just getting, books, that would cater to this kind of thing. But I also got a VHS tape that was a 2-part VHS tape by Scott Henderson. And it essentially became my Bible, because it made so much sense. And it was all about how rhythm is the king, no matter what you're playing. If you don't have, if you're doing all sorts of stuff, but there's no rhythm involved, it's not going to speak. It really set a great tone for me. And I started to learn by myself for the rest of my teens and such. And it kind of put me on a good path as far as learning, because I realized pretty quickly what does work and what doesn't for my learning process, and what was wrong when I would see books that would have a lick with no explanation. Where do I use this? Yeah. Like such lazy education. I still can't stand it. And maybe that's why I'm so comprehensive when I'm teaching, because I don't want to leave any stone unturned, because I was just furious buying books and VHS tapes and stuff. And like, here's a lick. Okay. The next lick, it's like, wait. Where do I use that? How do I use that? How did you think of that? Like, none of that was answered in those books back then, really.
That's funny. That makes so much sense to me, because that's kind of something I've been struggling with lately. It really is. Like, where during the time of quarantine, right? So we're sitting at home, I've had more time to actually pick up a guitar and play more. And there's been quite a few moments where we're making these connections that maybe I hadn't made in the past. And a lot of it comes down to what you're saying. Oh,
yeah.
I can use that. Oh, that's why that works.
Listen, if I turned my guitar this way and you weren't watching me, and I played something that was, something like that, like most people aren't going to think about that. That's actually just a little bit of pentatonic with some extra notes. So yes, it starts to morph into Dorian and various other scales. But the way that I explain to people, I'm just playing minor pentatonic with a little bit of a jazz technique nuance, which is the quick slide from a non-diatonic note to a diatonic note. Instantly, you sound a little jazzy, Mm-hmm. Not that it's that easy, because jazz is deep. It is what it is. But without that explanation, that explanation can't not be told, in my opinion. It has to be there. Or else you just leave people wondering, and you'll get it someday. I don't want to get it someday. I want to get it right now, because I just paid for this book. you know? So I want all the answers that are supposed to be in here instead of just, here's a line, now go have fun with it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's one thing I can see consistently from everything that you do. The artist, right? Because you talked about that's really what you want to express yourself. But the way you kind of approach that, you just like, even when you broke down your own band's video, you're like, hey, I'll break down that solo at some point. I'll show you what it is and why I did it. So it's fantastic. And I was thinking back to your guitar teacher. You know, good for him to have like a little bit of the Mount Rushmore, one of the many versions of Mount Rushmore of guitarists that you could draw from just by seeing them, right? Like sparking that curiosity, which leads me to a question. So you've mentioned Robin Ford and others, and obviously a 20-year relationship and touring with Steve Vai. Mm-hmm. Have you had these moments of like you've been able to share stage with some other people that maybe you're like, wow, that was an idol of mine growing up, or, you know, anything like that happened to you? I would have to say the answer is probably yes, but.
You know, there's been a ton of them. You know, we've done a lot of G3 tours.
Yeah.
So that's always Satch and Steve. Well, at least if Steve's on it. And then a third, and that third has been John Petrucci multiple times, Malmsteen, Steve Morse, Steve Lukather, Paul Gilbert. And you're on the road for multiple weeks, if not months at a time. And it's just a fantastic way to get to know people. And of course, these are people who I listened to and respected growing up, and was learning their songs and their licks to get inside of their head. Mm-hmm. Other various things, you know. I went back to be a teacher at GIT in between tours. So Scott Henderson is a teacher there, or at least he was a teacher there. So, you know, when I had a few minutes in between my students, I would pop my head in his room and watch him, because, you know, this is one of the guys that really kind of helped me to form some really good habits as a musician from very early on. We did a show a couple of years ago, a lot of people on stage. I don't remember exactly who, but you know, Robin Ford was one of them, you know, and he was standing right next to me, playing like Robin Ford does, which is I always, you know, I love his playing. It's super tasty, you know, through a crazy dumble, and it's just awesome.
It's been really cool too. I think he's really kind of embraced social media. I mean, he's on Instagram and stuff all the time now from his house in, you know, East Nashville. So it's really cool to see a lot of people taking this time and sort of connecting with people. So yeah, that's great. That's really awesome you've been able to do that.
It's a really unique time where a lot of people, I mean, Vai goes live every Tuesday and Thursday, and he is giving away, again, I mean, he's in his, well, how old is he? Is it this year he's turning 60? You know, about a month from now. Let's say 5 decades of experience. And he's he's giving away so much amazing information for free that if this quarantine thing wasn't happening, you know, when he's not touring, he does these master classes all around the world. And people pay high money to be at them, to hear the same things that he's talking about for free. It's amazing. You know, the quarantine has not been, of course, everybody wants it to end, but I think we all, as a race, a species of humanity, should be patting ourselves on the back for, or at least the ones who are doing what you're doing, and sharing. That's really what it's about, sharing knowledge so that we can all get the answers and shortcut it for a lot of people from the experience, right? Mm-hmm. It's really a cool thing. Yeah, there's a lot of great, I mean, have you seen Devin Townsend's concerts? They're amazing. You know, it's really, really awesome.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Well, we're really glad you came on, because I mean that's one thing that shows through. If people go down a path, you know, you are a great guy and a cool human being, and doing this hour of distraction has been interesting for us because we get to see a lot of the same names in the chat, and I don't see him in here today, but like there's a guy, Sean Zimmerman, that's going through like dialysis, and he's kind of openly shared that on this, and these hours of us, like when we have a guest, it's great. When it's not, it's like a bad episode of Seinfeld, the show about nothing, right? But just to have these moments with people And I don't see him on there today, but he was looking forward to kind of listening to this interview with you while going through dialysis. So you just don't know, right? Like this stuff that, you know, selfishly wanted to have you on. You're an interesting guy. You're a great player, but like just the overall impact of this is fantastic. So thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It is great. And I'm, you know, I enjoy also getting online and seeing these kinds of shows and the guests and even forget the guests, just, you know, some good discussions about things, because you can always learn more. You know, you can always learn more about anything, something from like we're talking about here with learning philosophy, to gear. You know, I'm playing through these two Friedman small box 50s back here. If anybody's
yeah, they were talking about those earlier. It might be we are pushing the hour limit here, but it might be interesting just to mention them really quick, because they were mentioning those in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, these amps, I've been playing them since they came out, and immediately it's like, to me, gear takes 5 seconds to know if it works or doesn't for you. But that only happens if you know your tone. And tone does not come from gear. Gear is the materialization of your tone. Your tone is here, obviously. I mean, well, maybe it's not obvious, but, you know, you kind of have to know what you want to sound like. And how does that happen? Well, through your influences. Growing up or whatever, the people you listen to, the guitar players you like, their sound, and et cetera. I mean, if you're a Jimmy Page fan, you're probably going to pick up a Les Paul. You know, if you're a Clapton fan, for the most part, he's playing a Strat, right? But you got to start somewhere, and that's usually where it starts. And then, you know, but you might be a fan and of somebody who plays a Strat, and you might get a Strat and be like, you know what, that doesn't really have the output I want or the right sound, you know. But so there is an exploration to it, no matter what. But if you know your tone, you can start making decisions really, really easily. But you do have to experiment. You know, you have to know what alder sounds like versus ash and mahogany, and what a 50-watt EL34 sounds like versus 6 L6s or 6 V6s or 4 EL34s or KT88s or whatever. And then the cabs, you know, 112, 212, 312, 412, and what's in them and why. We gotta go through that. Everybody does, you know. Because I've done that, I know what serves my tone the best. My idea of tone and the way that I physically play to make that happen on the guitar, and then the guitar to make that happen, and the amp, and then anything in between those two to make that happen. And for me, the small box 50, the Friedman small box 50 was the answer. It's a simple amp, but I can do anything. I can do anything with it. Any sound that I could conjure up, it's in there. It's not going to give me a Fender clean. It's not going to give me a Marshall, you know, cranked. It's its own thing, but to me, that's a good thing. You know, it just does everything that's in my head. So I do run them stereo, you know, a left and a right. And this one, all the knobs on the front don't do anything because it's a return amp, which means out of, I'm using a Strymon Volante for a little bit of delay and reverb here. And just out of the right side of that feeds that. So it takes the preamp from this, feeds it into this, and 2 412s, which are a mixture of V30s and greenbacks in each cabinet. It's my tone quest is done, and it has been done for quite a while. So I highly recommend checking out the Friedman stuff, because, you know, these amps are barely on one. I'm speaking louder than these amps are right now, and they sound so good. You know, if you watch me live, like on Thursday for my virtual trading thing, or if you do watch the Guitopia stuff, it's these amps. You know, I'm barely even pushing them to, I'm not pushing them. They're not even on one, and they clean them them up nicely. Maybe giving the guitar tune would be nice as well, but they just sound fantastic. So yeah, for me, this is the rig, and depending on what I'm recording that day, yeah, I might pick up a Les Paul or a hollow body, or I've got various other Strats and a Tele over here, but it all goes through these amps. I have not to sound materialistic, but I have a bunch of amps, but you know, that's over years and years of, this is what I do all day, every day, you know, and right. 2020 was my year of trying to minimalize and simplify. So I'm trying to sell off a bunch of stuff because, and you know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, what if I need it? You can buy it again, first of all, but do you need it? So I've got Marshalls and Orange and Mesas and also Fenders, all sorts of stuff that I'm just getting rid of. I just don't need any of it. But
you don't have the Vibrolux, do you?
I don't have a Vibrolux. I mean, the only I've got twins and a deluxe, and I'm selling one twin and I'm selling one basement. As far as the stuff is concerned,
go find the
Vibrolux is like the Grail amp for me. That's
great amp.
Yeah, that's a great.
So
amp.
go find the Dave Weiner reverb store and
right.
stock up.
You know, I just sold. I had somebody just bought I had a TC Electronic D2. If you remember those things, it was a one rack space delay unit. It was the first delay that you could tap in a rhythm.
Oh wow.
And I used it on a Vi. It's an awesome delay. You can find them really cheap now. And I posted one up on Reverb like 3 years ago and forgot about it. And somebody just bought it the other day. And I messaged him on Reverb. I was like, I don't even know if this thing still works. Let me check it out. Everything worked out great, but I don't have anything up there yet. But I'm going to post some stuff. I try and sell locally or on Craigslist or private or anything. You know, Reverb is a great resource, but they do take their cut. And that does add up.
Right.
But yeah, if anybody has any, I don't know if there's a time limit or anything, but I was going to say if anybody has any last minute questions on, you know, the gear or anything like that, since we're talking about it, or anything else, feel free to ask before we call it a day here.
We're about an hour and 7 minutes, and we asked Dave for an hour of his time, and so we will be wrapping it up shortly. But if you he asked, so if you have any last minute questions you want to throw in the chat, we could do that. We could give a couple more minutes for that.
So if we give a couple more minutes for that, is there the elevator story of your connection with PRS? Just while we're kind of waiting, like the Jeopardy theme song playing while we're waiting to see if somebody comes up with questions.
Yeah, I mean, I was an Ibanez artist for 10 years, but that contract was exclusive. So it was like anything like this, I had to be playing in Ibanez and anything live and concerts and clinics and all that kind of stuff, which was great. You know, I was very appreciative of getting a contract when I turned, 22 and joined Steve's band. You know, it was like a dream come true growing up and seeing, people with endorsements and all that kind of stuff. Great company, great gear. It was just that my tastes were, migrating, we'll say. Mm-hmm. And I said to Ibanez when my contract was being renewed, I was like, you know what? I still want to play the guitars, but I don't only want to play Ibanez. And this is 2 generations of artist reps ago by now, but he was like, well, that's kind of the way that we do it. So I said, I'm sorry, I don't want to continue. And I was not looking to work with anybody else as far as an endorsement, because I still don't want to be like tied into a piece of gear. If I need to pick up a Les Paul, I'm going to play Les Paul. Right. It is what it is. But there's a guy named Daniel Klein, and he owns Port City Amplification, which are fantastic amps down there, I believe, in North Carolina. He and I were talking, and he's like, I know Paul Reed Smith's right-hand man. Why don't I connect you guys? PRS is about 2 hours south of me here, and maybe you can go down and check him out. So I said, okay. So I did, and went down to the factory, took a tour, met the artist people, met Paul Reed Smith, and everybody was super cool. And I've said this story before, but they sent me home that day with like 6 guitars. And I was with no real explanation. That's kind of how they did it at the time. I was like, am I keeping these or whatever? It didn't really matter because I took home different kinds of guitars because they said, well, what are you interested in? I said, honestly, I've never played a PRS. I mean, I did play 1 or 2 here and there, but they were always out of budget as a teenager, of course. And then I got an Ibanez contract. I wasn't really looking. I said, I don't know much about these guitars. So, I went home with a bunch of them, played them all. And I returned all of them except for 1. I kept 1, which is an Ashbody 513, which is in the other room. Amazing guitar. And then we kind of went from there. So that was my connection to PRS, and they're just fantastic people. The company is awesome. Again, they're 2 hours south of here. So I've driven down with I keep pointing over here because I used to have a PRS stack right here, which is now out in my living room. I've taken amps down there and guitars, just to be like, hey, I'm going to pop down for a couple hours. I need this worked on. One of my guitars from touring had like a bunch of divots in the back of the neck. They filled those up. Like they're those kind of people, just really, really awesome. They do their PRS experience, or I guess it's called Experience PRS, which they do every other year now. Unfortunately, it's canceled this year.
Right.
Awesome stuff. Awesome people. Just really great situation. I don't have a contract with them because we did talk about that. But I use PRS all the time. They're so well made. They sound amazing. Yeah. So that's kind of why I played, the PRS.
Yeah, we're big fans too.
I see that.
Shameless. Anyway.
And we get a question here in the chat that kind of goes along with the gear stuff. Brian asked if Daniel Steinhardt built your board, and I'm feeling like I saw a rig rundown with him. So,
well, to answer the question, no. Daniel's a good friend of mine, and he has supplied a G2 or 2 or 3, over the years, as they have kind of revised their gear. So I do use the G2 for one of my boards, but I build my boards myself. It's not hard to do. You just have to be a little anal about it and be really attentive to the cleanliness and the detail. At least for me, that's the way that I like to do it. But once you learn about MIDI, building your own board is really easy, and it takes a little time. I do all my own custom cabling. I usually use lava cable for that. But once you start doing it yourself, there are no limits. You're not worried about paying somebody. You're not worried about time. You can get exactly what you're looking for, and it's time well spent. So I've built tons of boards, and I like it. It's fun. It satisfies the kind of organizational nerd in me. But Daniel's stuff is awesome, and I did do a spot on their show, the Pedal show.
I've seen that.
Where they came. We were doing a show. I was out on tour with Steve Vai, and Mick and Dan came, and we did an interview and a little bit of a rundown through the rig, which at the time I was using not the small box 50s. I was using the BE 100s. Mm-hmm. Just because with Steve's music, a little more headroom is good. 100 watt, instead of 50 watt.
All right.
Nice.
I think. Is there any other questions?
other than Jack the Rabbit asking,
because there's like a million other questions, right? There's like a million other questions. But
it's all good. It's all good. I'm happy to. We got started a little late, and that was my fault, so I apologize for that. But
no problem.
Yeah, I think again, as far as gear is concerned, there's so much great gear. I love gear, pedals, all that kind of stuff. But think about your tone, and I always ask people who seem to be on a never-ending tonal quest. They're never satisfied. even when they do like the right kind of searching, as far as, all right, we're going to take let's say a Strat, like a Fender Strat, and we're going to get the same pickups in an ash body and an alder body, and one with a maple board and one with a rosewood board. So when you put the time in and you get the exact same configuration, but with the different different woods, then you can really hear the difference. So even people that are doing that sometimes struggle with still the right path, as far as gear is concerned. And that the only answer to that is it's not up here first. It's the root of the tone is not in place yet. So I say to those people, all right, forget all the gear. Can you describe in words and adjectives and such what your tone is? Can you do that? If that answer is no, then that's something that should be thought of, because that, if you can think about it and verbalize it, that will point you in a better direction than trying to figure out wood and all that kind of stuff. Like my tone, I like clarity, articulation, warmth. So I don't like hot outputs, which is one of the reasons I love Strats, or single coils in general. Plenty of guitars where I need humbuckers, plenty of musical situations. But again, for the most part, I need single coils because of the articulation and kind of that beautiful, that just hollowness that happens from a neck single coil. And even when I play like this amp, I'm on the what's called the BE channel, which was the dirty channel on here, and the gain is up 60%. So I don't play with a ton of gain, which maybe I probably should, but I don't, because that to me is a good amount of gain. But I still want the articulation. I want to hear every note. I practice, so I want to hear all these notes. I like the articulation. I don't like a lot of like really high end. Gets a little brittle and ear fatiguing. That's really why I started turning down my treble and my presence. But single coils are usually a little bit bright anyway. So it serves my purpose, immensely. So when you can think of it that way, when you can start to speak and describe your tone, that will help you to find the tools that will help to accentuate that and materialize that. And I think that's a good starting place for anybody who is having a little bit of trouble kind of on that tone quest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's cool. And that's not great, by the way.
Yeah,
these amps and this guitar and again, it is also the way you touch the guitar, and we have to remember that.
it's
The way that I touch, little gracie nuances and like a little slur for me. That kind of stuff, that's part of the way that I touch the guitar, and it does help to bring out a certain sound. And I'm firm with the guitar, but I'm not super heavy-handed, which is going to be a contradiction, because like I said, the lesson that comes out tomorrow is all about like greasy, like really digging in, which sounds good sometimes, but you do see, there is a difference in the tone when you dig in versus being a little bit lighter. And the physical way that you touch the guitar should be the starting point of the manifestation of your tone in your head. But what are you touching? Of course, that's part of the equation. Are you touching, a rosewood board on an alder guitar or something else?
Right.
Like for me, I can't play mahogany guitars on a clean channel. They all just don't sound good to me. They all just sound like way too mid-rangey. That's why I like Les Pauls with P90s, because it does kind of counterbalance that a bit more. but mahogany through a clean channel, you'll never hear me do that. That's just me, though. You know, somebody else. I mean, how many amazing records were made with mahogany guitars, aka Les Pauls, most Paul Reed Smiths, SGs, nearly every Gibson, right? How many amazing records have been made with that? It's just not in here for me.
Right. Somebody down in the chat asked what guitar you use for acoustic parts, and I did see that it looked like you had a PRS acoustic in your hand a while ago.
Acoustic. Right? Yeah, this is my main acoustic. This is a PRS Angelus, and I've had this since 2012. This is a 2012 model. And it's just fantastic. So this is the one that I use for most acoustic stuff. I've got a 7-string Ibanez acoustic that's very nice. I've got a cheap Ibanez 12-string. It's not that I need to replace it, but I mean the guitar might have been $150, so it's kind of sounds like it. But it was a nice acoustic for some 12-string stuff. But I'm writing another. I put out an acoustic record in 2012, and now I'm finally getting around to writing another one. And during this process, I'm realizing I want. Well, it's interesting because during the whole process of that record until now, speaking of mahogany guitars that I can't really get into and clean, the acoustic guitars that I actually like are all mahogany. You know, mahogany sides, mahogany back, spruce top. This one has a mahogany neck. Those are the best acoustics to my ear. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I was down at the PRS factory. I had another one of these that I probably shouldn't have, but I took it out on tour, and one of Steve's guitars fell on the top here and just cracked it. So, you know, you play it and the thing is just rattling. It's making all sorts of noise. So I took it back down to the PRS factory, and it was one of the first ones of these that they made. It didn't even have a truss rod. For some reason, they were not putting truss rods in the acoustics at the time. Now they are. And I said, can you fix this? And he's like, you know what? We've refined this so much. Why don't we pull out a few and listen to them and just trade it? You know, you take whichever one instead of this one, give this one back to us. I said, okay, that's fair enough. So they brought out the usual spruce and rosewood or variations of that. And the last one I played was this one. And I said, I don't want to know what they are. Don't tell me what they're all about. But this was the last one that I played, and it just sounded like the most natural, organic, acoustically, sounding acoustic. And I came to find out that it was because of the mahogany. So now when I search for acoustics, like I was just playing this really nice, beautiful, I think it was a Gibson Hummingbird Studio. So it was probably a $2,000 acoustic, but it was spruce and mahogany. Awesome. It was so nice. And again, it was the kind of thing where I just kind of pulled it off the wall and I played it. I was like, man, this thing sounds good. What's going on with this? And he was like, oh, it's mahogany. So now again, the knowledge leads me towards choosing certain gear. But that's what this one is, spruce and mahogany. And it just sounds fantastic.
That's cool. We talked about Sean Zimmerman earlier, and he just had a medical procedure today, and finally was able to join the chat. We told Dave all about you and told you that you were going to try to listen in as sort of a pain relieving activity today. So yeah,
that's awesome, Sean. Get better soon, man.
Yeah. So somebody said that you might have said this. The acoustic you're playing, that's one they built in Maryland.
This is a Maryland-made one. Yes, this is not one of the SE ones. Which those are after I took a Maryland-made one out on tour, which just sounds absolutely fantastic. So it would make sense why you would. But after it broke from touring, just stuff happens on tour. It is what it is. Then I took a pair of PRS SE model acoustics out on tour with me because I was just plugging them in anyway. I got the opportunity in Europe to open the show for Vai. After I released my acoustic record, I was playing it as part of the opening, as the opening act, which was absolutely amazing. And those SEs just killed it. They sounded amazing because, again, we're just plugging them in. They feel great. I can't find a better guitar for the money than those SE acoustics from PRS. They're like $700, and they look and they sound amazing. They sound really good.
It's funny because I've heard that same thing from Mike Alt and from Brian Ewald. Now they're both PRS guys, right? But
Sure,
to that point, they could play any PRS they want to.
Yeah.
And they just sing the praises of those SE acoustics all the time.
You know, again, I've had some lesser expensive Ibanez, and Yamaha makes actually really nice, inexpensive acoustics. I've over 3+ decades, I've tried a lot of gear. Again, doing it all day, every day. You're invested in it. And those SE acoustics that PRS is putting out, I mean, $600, $700, $800, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
It's also because Paul Reed Smith, and I saw somebody make a comment about, Paul's word is good enough. And anybody that knows Paul Reed Smith, or even just listens to him give a speech of some sort, this guy is so invested in what he's doing. Even if it's an overseas made guitar, it is not going to be a piece of crap. It is going to be made the way that it should be made. Is it the same as a $5,000 Maryland-made Angelus? No, but it's quite a price difference.
Right.
And for the price, it's fantastic.
Well, a little bit to that point, Jason and I did go on a factory tour, and I knew that the thing I learned that day of many things was that all of the SEs get shipped to Maryland to get inspected before they go out. So it's not like that's a whole nother extra level of this has got to meet my specifications and standards.
Yeah, so every one of those guitars from overseas goes to Maryland and gets checked out.
Right.
That's awesome.
I was laughing at Brian. He said Bosco would carve his phone number in the back. We had Bosco France on. I don't know if you've ever met Bosco. I've
had the pleasure many times. Amazing player, awesome person.
Yeah, he did.
He was fun.
Oh yeah, he was fun on the show. It's like herding cats.
Focus.
He's not the finely refined Philadelphia gentleman that you are, Dave.
I'm calm.
See, also in the chat we got TL Pedals Canada joined, and Paul Ewing was talking to us about him and the pedals that he makes and trying to get us to have him on the show. So it's nice to see you down there, and
Very cool.
I mean, email. And
a real quick comment about acoustics. Brody, my friend Brody chimed in because when you mentioned mahogany, he's a big Martin fan, and so am I. But the D18 is mahogany, and that's why that's a great songwriting, singer-songwriter kind of guitar. It's got a real nice tone to it. But,
again, before all of this craziness happened, because I'm also I work on projects in parallel, and like I said, one of them is this new acoustic record. So while I'm in the midst of the acoustic writing and stuff, aside from I need a really nice 12-string, Nazareth, PA is not super far from Philadelphia, and before all this, I had planned. I've got some friends that work at Martin, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come up, try everything. I'll pick something, I'll buy it, and blah blah blah. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened, and I don't think they're open, and PRS is shut down right now. And
right.
When everything opens again, I will certainly check out the D18. There's a store on Broad Street in Philadelphia called it's just called Vintage Instruments, and they deal with classical instruments like violins and violas and cellos and all that kind of, but they also do acoustics and sometimes electric guitars as well. And I'm kicking myself because over the last summer I went there, and they had a beautiful, it was like the Martin Custom Shop, whatever that's called. Maybe it's just called the Martin Custom Shop. But they had a beautiful D40 12-string, which I don't think is mahogany, but it was outstanding. And it was, I mean, it had so much like good, like, I don't know what to call it, the accoutrement on top of it. It was just beautiful, and played it. I was like, let me think about it, and I was going out on tour, just doing a show or something down in South America, and I came back and it was gone. I was like, oh, crap. And I've been trying to find one since, but, my friend Ed Martin, he's like, just come up. We'll we've got other things that you can look at, but Martin, you can't go wrong with them. Gibson, that Hummingbird really was impressive to me. Taylor, of course, makes great stuff, but I did a benefit show for PRS many years ago, and there were like two parts of it. The first part was an acoustic part, so I was going to play some acoustic, and I remember I got down to Maryland. I was in the hotel room, and Paul Reed Smith knocks on the door, and he brings in a guitar case, and it was an early version of this, and I played it, and I was like, not for nothing, but I sold my Taylor after that. Because you can never go wrong with a Taylor. They are beautiful, and I wish I would have kept it, honestly. I wish I would have kept it. It was a 914, whatever it was. Beautiful Taylor. I was just like I am right now, where I'm kind of in the mode of downsizing. I go through those phases, like I'm sure most people do. It's like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of gear, and now I don't want any of it. I'm trying to downsize, but these things are fantastic. I mean, these things just they sound so damn good. I was just writing with my singer before this. We were doing a bit of a session, and we were doing this song that's actually, let me play with this. That's kind of the main riff of it, and then we were working on the chorus, like a stuff like that, and I'm just sitting there playing that, and he's like, oh, that acoustic just sounds so good.
It does. Even through StreamYard, it sounds great.
I'm going to have to agree with you there. But, these things are great. They're fantastic.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
I don't think there's any other questions down there right now. Lots of comments on what we've been talking about. But
sure.
So, wow, we are at 1 hour and 32 minutes.
Yeah, I like your exchange rate, Dave. We started 3 minutes late. You gave us an extra 30 minutes. It's a pretty generous exchange rate.
It's all good. It's all good. I like I said, this quarantine time, I've never experienced anything like it. I don't think most people have, unless you're like my dad is 95, and he was a bomber pilot in World War II, and the sacrifice that they had to give at that time compared to now, I mean, we're sacrificing now, but it's not even close. Yeah. If all we have to do is stay home,
right,
and do this,
right,
I'm happy to stay on for 90 minutes, whatever it's going to be. This is not hard. I know quarantine sucks, and this has been extremely detrimental and a really tough time on a lot of levels. There's no doubt about that. I'm not diminishing by any means the heaviness that has come along with this.
Mm-hmm.
But if it means just staying home and having guitar conversations,
mm-hmm,
you can count me in.
Pete Hickson said we're on Canadian time. It's just for if you ever spent any time in Canada, it is true. Canadian time seems to take about twice as long, at least in my experience, where we go to Canada every year. My wife and I lovingly call it Canadian time whenever we go there.
Yeah. But, you know, it's the quarantine has also slowed a lot of things down. You know, like productivity for me is kind of through the roof. I don't have a day job in the sense of, you know, I go somewhere for a 9-to-5 type of thing. So that I haven't been affected like that. What it has done is cancel all the other plans, which has been a little bit of a nice breath of fresh air, because I really just want to play guitar all the time anyway. So now I have an excuse to tell everybody to F off and stay home and write and, you know, do my lessons for Guitopia and such. I mean, I'm months ahead on all that stuff, and it's for me, it's a welcome thing too. Again, it's a privilege, and the fact that we can sit here while everybody's kind of sequestered to their own homes, and have a great conversation with the people watching, a conversation with you guys for hosting and everything. It's appreciated. I think that's the point, is not taking it for granted, being appreciative, even though it sucks. Everything that has happened sucks, but there are things to still be grateful for. So sitting around having a guitar conversation is certainly one of them.
Yeah, if they turned the internet off, we would be serious
rioting in the streets.
You know, I think everybody's thought about that point, and I think at first it would be a shock. But I do think that after a while, it would give us a nice bit of reset, you know, as far as a lack of eyes glued to social media. And I got to check Facebook, what's happening on Facebook, you know. And I think a little bit of a break from all of that would kind of be okay. Of course, my business would go into the toilet at that point. But I think for the greater good, it might be an okay thing, as long as it starts back up at some point.
That's right.
All right.
Except for the fact that I have to go to the bathroom, I would stay on.
I'm 10 years older than you. I'm way ahead of you, bro.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who has been in here and watching and posting up the comments and questions. I appreciate it. You know, hit me up, stay in touch, and you guys as well. We'll do this again.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody that joined us. If you're new here, we would love for you to subscribe. That's the only time we really mention it at the end. But other than that, Pat, I think that's it.
Yeah, this our little slogan's kind of an interesting one today in the light of Dave talking about trying to pare down his gear. But this is PJ on behalf of the Beard reminding you, no matter what you hear, you never have too much gear. Peace out.
I agree with that.
All right, good.